Hello again, Dan Alasso, making history. It is day 48 of my retrenchment journey, and once again, I'm going to talk about something that isn't really retrenchment related. One of the cool things that I'm getting the benefit of as I begin revising my American environmental history textbook in preparation for updating the course and possibly making it available online, is that the textbook has 325 annotations in hypothesis, where my students in several classes over the last couple of years have commented and asked questions. As I am re-editing the chapter content of each chapter, I can review the feedback from dozens of students in order to understand what confused my readers, what they'd like more information on, etc. I'm thinking of adding additional links to outside sources, and as I have mentioned, taking some of the content out of the main narrative and putting it in kind of boxes on the side. I'm getting more excited about revising this text and making the media connections kind of more fun to follow and more interesting, and maybe even a little bit richer since I don't have to jam all of that into the main narrative. And this reminds me of a time back in the 80s when I was an undergraduate. There used to be a very simple Dungeons and Dragons style game hidden in one of the campus computer systems. This was before everybody was a computer user. I think it was on a VAX system that ran the continuing education department's registration application. Although at the time, students were still using a 3-part carbonless form, and pretty much my entire work-study job involved filing those forms alphabetically in dozens and dozens of file drawers. But in any case, it was an extremely simple, really simple game. You would just type an instruction into the text-only terminal, and it would respond. Something like, pick up the sword. And the game would say, okay, you've picked up the sword, but you put your torch down, and now you're standing in the dark. As basic as this game was, we would spend hours after work, a bunch of people clustered around a single terminal, making suggestions for what the person typing should do next, and then waiting for the glowing green letters of the responses. Part of the attraction was that, as I said, computers were brand new, and none of us really had regular access to them. But also, even that minimal amount of feedback and the possibility of being surprised was kind of what kept us glued to the screen. I mention this because I'm hoping to make my new format for my environmental history text fascinating enough that people will follow these trails and will pull on these threads of these slightly more distributed presentations to see where they lead. I wonder, as I'm thinking about this, whether I should include some additional interactive elements in addition to the choose your adventure aspect of deciding on each page other places they might like to go next. In the past, I've played with the idea of doing a really granular story where every moment was a sort of card that people would read and then have to choose at the bottom of the card where to go next. So very, very regular choices. And I think that process of trying to write that and of imagining people reading that taught me that it is possible to overdo that feature. There is probably a sweet spot between a narrative that is completely determined by the author and a totally random walk through content where anything at all could happen in any order. In fiction, this could be the difference between being very plot-driven on the one hand, and writing something that focuses on character or setting on the other. In history, there are actually some similarities. Sometimes a quickly moving narrative in a history with a lot of impressive and startling action can distract readers from subtlety and from complication. The same rhetorical techniques, after all, are used in all of these different forms of writing. The reader's mind fills in the gaps that the author leaves to make the story world appear as seamlessly real and as plausible as possible. That's not necessarily a great thing in histories, since those leaps of intuition that we make to fill in these gaps might be wrong, might be anachronistic, might be based on our own time and our own prejudices rather than on what was really there in the past. But I'm getting a bit off course here. And that actually has led me to wonder whether this is really the right place to be talking about this. Whether I'm really doing a retrenchment diary anymore at all. Or if I'm starting to use this space as I'm feeling less inclined to gripe about what's going on at Bemidji State to talk about my writing project or my open ed work or historiography or whatever. On the one hand, I am focusing on these issues and projects much more intensely because of the retrenchment and because I am facing an imminent career change. On the other hand, I already have sections for open education and note-making and primary sources and historiography, etc. So maybe I should be asking you, the viewer, to respond. And I'm serious about this. Should I talk about this stuff in a daily retrenchment post? Should I stop the retrenchment posts and focus on the new stuff and still make daily videos but about these other subjects? Or should I continue to have a retrenchment blog but drop the daily retrenchment postings and just say something when something happens at Bemidji State or in the system that relates to this job change specifically? These are kind of three choices to respond to. And although I won't promise, like Elon, to do whatever the majority says, I am curious and I will probably alter what I'm doing here a little bit. So I would welcome your feedback. And as always, I appreciate your attention and I'm glad that you've decided to spend this time with me. And I hope you found some of this interesting. So thanks very much for watching. And regardless of what the topic is, I will see you again tomorrow.